Welcome to the Bill Walton Show, featuring conversations with leaders, entrepreneurs, artists, and thinkers. Fresh perspectives on money, culture, politics, and human flourishing. Interesting people, interesting things.
Welcome to the Bill Walton Show. I'm Bill Walton. The most politically watched election in America takes place this November in the race to become the next governor of Virginia. It's going to be the first election since Joe Biden took office, and in a sense, this is going to be a referendum among the voters about how they feel the job that Joe's doing. And joining me today is the Republican candidate, Glenn Youngkin. After an outstanding career with the Carlyle Group, where I first got to know Glenn, he rose to be co-chief executive officer, and now he's bringing his business experience and results-oriented mindset to become governor of Virginia. And as a fellow practitioner of private equity, I just couldn't be happier because I think Glenn is the right man for the job. Glenn, welcome.
Bill, thank you for having me, and it's great to be on your show.
Well, it's great to have you here. So, look, before we jump into the Virginia governor's race, let's talk about your career in private equity. You were there at Carlyle for 25 years. And,
I was.
And what I don't think people say private equity. Most people don't know what that means. What is it?
Yeah, well, I didn't know what it means.
You were a basketball player.
Yeah, I'm a homegrown Virginian. I mean, I was born in a little part of Richmond called Bon Air, and I didn't grow up in a world of finance. In fact, in 7th grade, my dad lost his job, and my family repotted and moved to Virginia Beach.
You were a basketball player at Rice, and your father was a basketball player at Duke?
At Duke, he was.
Okay.
He was. And so we had basketball in the family. But when he lost his job when I was in 7th grade, my mom moved all of us, including my dad, to Virginia Beach. I actually just learned how to work hard. Yeah. And that was just a big moment for me. I got a job at a diner, taking out trash and washing dishes, and I had jobs all the time. Yeah. And jobs ranged from flipping eggs and taking out trash to loading trucks to waiting tables, and I just always had a job. Mm-hmm. And so private equity was not something I had ever heard of when I was growing up. But
you're not standing there at the sink washing dishes saying, "Gee, I'd rather be in private equity."
I'd rather be in private equity. No, I was actually standing there happy I had a job. But when I got out of school at Rice, and I was trained as an engineer. And when I got out of school, there weren't a lot of engineering jobs in Texas because I went to school in Houston. And I ended up going to work for something called an investment bank. And I'll never forget my very first job interview.
You were at First Boston.
I was at First Boston.
Yeah.
My very first job interview, someone said, "Well, can you talk to us about the net present value of money?" And then I said, "I don't know much about that, but I can tell you how much fluid can go through a pipe at different temperatures."
Right.
And they said, "Okay, we got this. You got the math." And so that was my first exposure into the world of finance. And I went to grad school, and when we came back to Northern Virginia, Suzanne, my wife at the time, still my wife, we got married and came back 27 years ago. I met a guy named David Rubenstein. And that's how I got exposed to private equity. And it was an opportunity to step into a growing industry that was really young at the time, but had a lot of momentum. And I spent 25 years at Carlyle, and it was an amazing career.
And you ran a lot of different businesses at Carlyle. What did you run?
Well, I spent most of my time in the world of the industrial segment, manufacturing, chemicals, and industry, energy, both traditional energy and renewables. And in 2008, I was asked to step out of the investing side of Carlyle, and I started to work in senior management, and eventually had the great fortune of having a chance to run
Carlyle. And how many
Carlyle.
people did you manage there?
Well, Carlyle today, when I left, is just under 2,000.
Wow. Okay.
And it was, when I left, about $230 billion of assets under management. And I'm always have to step back because that's a big number. I mean, it's literally about 4 times the annual budget in Virginia. And we had investments in companies in all kinds of industries, and it really gave me a chance to understand lots of different industries and to really recognize that there's no single way to invest, but it's actually seeing in companies opportunity and then unleashing that opportunity and helping those companies be great companies.
Let's talk about that process, because people demonize. I know this is particularly true with Mitt Romney when he ran for president. Private equity was supposed to be this terrible thing, asset stripping by companies, fire everyone and just take the cash and run. That's not how it works.
At all. That's not how it works at all.
How does it work?
And in fact, if that's the way it worked, it wouldn't be an industry.
Right.
Because you can't purposely try to tear things down and expect to create value.
Yeah.
It's just not the way it works. I do think that that's convenient for folks that don't understand private equity or trying to drive an agenda about private equity. But it's absolutely not the way it works. And in fact, the way we always approach it is how do we find good companies that in fact may not be fully realizing their potential? And then how do we bring together expertise that exists inside Carlisle and expertise we could recruit from outside Carlisle in order to support a business plan that helps that company go from being a good company to being a great company? And that was all done on behalf of investors that really represent America. It's the teachers' retirement systems, and it's the public employee retirement systems, and the firefighter retirement systems. And the idea is that if we are entrusted with their money that's in their retirement pools, and we do a really good job managing it, then their retirement system actually grows, and they have a more secure retirement. And so that's why we always felt like we wanted to be clear about who we work for. We work for retirees in order to make their retirement more secure, and we're doing that by investing in good companies and helping them become great.
Well, I get a kick out of your partner, David Rubenstein, who, he's got his own show, and he does a good job. But he has all these famous guests on in all these industries, and he leans over and he says, the highest calling is actually private equity.
Yeah, he usually ends most shows like that.
But then he tried to get a job as a guest host on Saturday Night Live, which was sort of fun to watch.
Well, I didn't quite share David's view because I really felt that after 25 years in private equity, last summer, I had this amazing sense of purpose to actually move into public service. And I'd watched Virginia over a number of years actually fall behind all of our peer states. And I'd also watched the Republican Party learn how to professionally lose. It had been 10 years since the Republican Party had actually won a statewide election. And the combination of what I viewed as bad leadership coming from the Democrats and a Republican Party that was not competing really put on my heart this great purpose to go run for governor and to go serve Virginians, to get hired by Virginians, to actually work for them, to take Virginia from being good enough, and I think Virginia settles. And it's good enough. Well, I don't think so. I think Virginia should be great. And the exact same philosophy that I've always used to think about how we build businesses from being good businesses to great businesses, I actually think is quite transferable to Virginia, where we can take Virginia from being good enough, where people settle for, unfortunately, mediocrity at times. And Virginia should be great, just like it was many, many years ago. And we can make that happen, and that's why I'm running for governor.
So what did Ralph Northam do wrong as governor?
Well, I think first and foremost, he forgot that the job of the governor is to lead. And leadership means actually setting out a vision for where Virginia should be, and then pulling people together and uniting people in order to get there. Yeah. And the highlight of that, in my mind, is how he managed through the pandemic. And sadly, all he did during the pandemic was actually taken, in my view, soft and weak positions, highlighted by our schools. So schools across the country were open over the course of the last year. State of Florida opened their schools 5 days a week last August. They did it in a safe way. They did it in a way that protected the teachers. They did it in a way that actually looked after the kids' health. But they also had their children in school 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, there were no health challenges that were caused by that. And instead of leading, what Ralph Northam did was allow the teachers' associations, the teachers' unions in Virginia, to exercise an enormous amount of influence in keeping our kids out of school and not giving parents the right to make that decision. This, to me, is representative of the way that he didn't lead. He did the same thing with our business community, where he kept our businesses closed and restricted for much longer than he ever had to. And in fact, even today, the state of emergency in Virginia is still extended until the end of June. Why? It's been lifted in so many other states. And leadership is actually stepping up and saying, we're going to move forward out of this pandemic, and we're going to revitalize our industry. We're going to get our kids moving again back in school. And Ralph Northam has done none of that.
So what would you do with the schools in Virginia? I mean, right now, the thing that's much on my mind, and I think a lot of other people's mind, is this critical race theory.
Yes.
And wokeness. And I think Loudoun County, I just was hearing, they're now assigning students as, in effect, monitors who are supposed to talk about and tell on other students who are not thinking politically correct thoughts. I mean, I feel like it's a combination of, Animal Farm or Lord of the Flies or 1984. I mean, it's really scary what they're doing.
It is. Well, where I start with schools is, what's our goal? Our goal is, in fact, to have a public education system in Virginia that's the best. Not just good enough, but is the best. And the first thing we have to recognize is, in order for it to be the best, we actually have to allow Virginia's kids to run as fast as they can and to actually excel. And the first thing that I've been so struck by is that our State Board of Education, under Ralph Northam, but actually continuing the philosophy of Terry McAuliffe when he was governor, is in fact to constrain the pace at which children can learn in schools. And it was highlighted by the fact that we uncovered the idea that we were going to stop teaching accelerated math classes until the 11th grade. And we were, in fact, not going to award advanced diplomas anymore, even for kids that did all the work. All under the misguided view that was going to be good for Virginia's kids. So start there, which is the philosophy, is to allow the kids to run as fast as they can, and not to hold students back, but in fact to unleash their aspirations.
Well, it seems like the whole curriculum business is about driving to the lowest common denominator rather than finding kids that can excel and promote that.
Yeah.
I mean, advanced math, all these things are going out of the curriculum.
Yeah. And as soon as we saw this happening, and I actually called them out on it, they said, no, we didn't mean that. We're just going to test it in Fairfax County. This is representative of the fact that what Terry McAuliffe and the left liberal Democrats believe is that teaching critical race theory in our schools, which is in fact divisive as opposed to unifying, as opposed to bringing our children together and helping them recognize the good in each other, they actually want to instill a sense of animosity between our kids. And instead of allowing our children to run as fast as they can, they want to slow them all down. And instead of inviting competition into our public school systems with charter schools and school choice, they want to protect the public schools and embed all the power in the teachers' associations or teachers' unions. There is a diametrically opposed set of forces here, which is what's best for our kids from a structure standpoint, school choice and charter schools, what's best from a curriculum standpoint, allowing our children to run fast in those things that can prepare them to compete in a world that's very competitive, and looking out for families or not. And this is, as governor, I am absolutely going to stand up for our kids.
Well, I want to stick with education, but hold on. I just noticed here, you're watching the Bill Walton Show, and I'm here with Glenn Youngkin, candidate for governor of Virginia, who I hope will be the next governor of Virginia, and we're talking about the state of our schools. Let's stay with that, but I want to bring the villain into the story. We haven't had a candidate named for Democrat candidate for governor yet, but we expect it's going to be Terry McAuliffe. Let's bring Terry into the picture here. I mean, Ralph Northam's in the rearview mirror. He did the damage he did. Now we got to undo it. Terry, what's the first thing that springs to your mind when you think of Terry McAuliffe as the next governor?
Well, Terry had his chance at being governor.
That's one thing. And what
he had his chance at being governor,
do?
And he didn't do a good job.
Right.
And now he wants to come back and ask Virginians to hire him again.
Yeah.
And I think this is why so many Virginians are eager for a different kind of candidate. Yeah. And as we talked about earlier, Bill, I'm a business guy. I am not a politician. I had a 30-year business career. And when I stepped out of my business career last summer and prepared to run for governor, and then I have spent the last 4 months traveling around Virginia, mean, like I've covered nearly 30,000 miles, speaking to tens of thousands of Virginians, Republicans, independents, and Democrats. What I hear over and over again is a consistent theme. One, what we've been doing isn't working, and I'd like something different. And oh, by the way, I'd like a governor who understands how to get things done as opposed to expresses a whole bunch of empty promises. And that's why, as I've spoken to people, they're like, Glenn, we're for you. We don't need a repeat of Terry McAuliffe. We want something new. We want someone who brings fresh ideas, and we want someone who can get things done.
Well, what Terry McAuliffe gets done is he raises money. But you've also begun having a lot of success raising money. Now, you know, the mark against you've made a fair amount of money in the private equity business, and so you can partially self-fund your campaign, but you're also attracting a lot of outside contribution. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we are. What's happening in this race is exactly where you started, Bill, which is people recognize the importance of this race in Virginia.
Yeah.
Not just for the future of Virginia, which, oh, by the way, when we look at what single party rule in Richmond has resulted in, it's resulted in this lurch left that would make Californians blush. And Virginians are tired of it. And so this is not only just about Virginia, however, because the national spotlight is on this, just like you said. There's only 2 races this year in the country, New Jersey and Virginia. And everybody recognizes that Virginia really is at a moment where Virginians are going to make a statement on behalf of the country. Mm-hmm. Do we, in fact, approve of what's happening in Washington in addition to what's been happening in Richmond? And oh, by the way, this cultural war, which is being waged in our schools, where our children are, in fact, the victims, how do we feel about that? And so all of a sudden, this statewide race for governor takes on a national importance. And the financial support that I've been receiving has come from nearly 40 different states and has come from across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And it just reflects the fact that this is not just a governor's race in Virginia, but this is a moment for Virginians and for Americans to stand up and say that left liberal agenda is not our future. So we have something different in mind.
You've outraised Terry McAuliffe. It's now early June. How much money do you have in your coffers?
We have a little over $4 million in the bank right now, and we've raised a little bit less than $16 million right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. So are you worried about the George Soros factor or the Zuckerberg factor? I mean, every left-wing billionaire is going to feel like this is a race they can't afford to lose.
Well, I think that the money will be raised for this race based on people having a real interest in what's going to happen in Virginia on a national level. And it's going to get raised, and it's going to get invested in winning. And we have a very clear view of what we need to win. And it is targeted towards running an efficient campaign. Listen, I'm a business guy. I'm going to run an efficient campaign. But I also know what we need to do to make sure that all Virginians have an opportunity to get to know me. And this is really important. Now, listen, I'm not a career politician. I don't bring 40 years of talking about political things to Virginians to bear. And so we're working hard to help Virginians get to know me. And that's, yes, through very traditional means of television commercials and radio commercials. I've had an enormous amount
how many big major media markets do we have? We've got D.C., we've got Richmond, we've got
Hampton Roads and Roanoke. We've got 4 big ones.
Okay.
And I've had an enormous amount of earned media, of folks that are just really interested to hear what I have to say. But I'm also spending a lot of time on the road. As I said, I've traveled nearly 30,000 miles meeting Virginians. And 80% of life is showing up. Mm-hmm. And I'm showing up. I'm showing up all over Virginia so that folks get a chance to meet me and know me and actually form an opinion based on real interaction as opposed to what other people want to say about me.
Has anything surprised you? You go out and interact with all these people. What are people thinking and feeling? What's the message that you're coming away with?
2 sides. One, frustration and some anger on where we are as a Commonwealth, but also hope and opportunity that we can, in fact, win in November and really get Virginia moving in a different direction. And that has probably been the most encouraging moment, Bill, this whole campaign, is this switch that happened during the nominating process, but not just with Republicans, where all of a sudden everybody said, well, wait a minute, Glenn, you can win. And Glenn, we like the vision that you were casting on where Virginia can go, and we want someone who can deliver results. This has been a real shift. And today, I find support from not just Republicans, but from independents and Democrats who just do not want what Terry McAuliffe and the left liberal wing of the Democrat Party are absolutely peddling.
Well, qualified immunity, I think, is something that McAuliffe has come out in support for. Do you want to describe what qualified immunity means?
Yeah, and he's come out to support getting rid of it.
Yeah, okay.
And this is really important. So,
yeah, I misspoke.
Safe communities is in a top level issue for all of Virginians.
Well, just to define it, qualified immunity is basically saying if you're a police officer, you've got immunity that covers certain circumstances. If you get rid of it, they can be sued, they can be put in jail, they have no protection against anybody who wants to say they didn't do the right thing.
Yes, but what it is not is absolute protection against bad deeds.
Right.
And I think this is where the idea of qualified immunity gets miscast. So with law enforcement being such an important topic for so many Virginians, and having a law enforcement capability that we want to be the best in the country, and with the left liberal Democrats across the country leading this idea of defunding, and then all of a sudden Terry McAuliffe saying he wants to get rid of qualified immunity, which protects law enforcement heroes from frivolous civil lawsuits. That's what it does. It protects them from frivolous civil lawsuits. It doesn't protect them from dereliction of duty, but it protects them from frivolous civil lawsuits. This is just another way to defund police, because now every single law enforcement hero is now at risk of losing their house or their life savings simply because they take an oath to protect all of us. And so in order to build the best law enforcement capability in the country, we have to invest in police. We have to protect qualified immunity. Yes, we have to make sure we have more transparency and more training and better equipment. And oh, by the way, when there is a bad actor, we have to remove that bad actor.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the vast majority of people in our law enforcement community today are trying so hard to do the right thing. And what the left liberal party, Democrat Party has done is absolutely knock their legs out to the point where we have understaffing. We can't fill up the police academies. Our seniority has gone down substantially because people are retiring way early. And we do not have the capabilities that we should have to have the best law enforcement in the country. I'm going to fix that.
How much power does the governor of Virginia have to do something about that? Is law enforcement a county matter, or is it a state matter, or is it some combination? What can you do as governor?
Yeah, it's a mix.
Okay.
Now, first of all, the governor can indeed protect qualified immunity.
Yeah.
Because if a bill comes across my desk that's going to get rid of qualified immunity, I'm going to veto it. I'm just not going to let it happen. But also, the governor and the legislature do have oversight over all the sheriff's offices across Virginia, which is an extraordinary number of law enforcement heroes, and also state police. Many counties will have their own police commissioner and police force, but again, they're still protected by qualified immunity. And so it's a combination in Virginia. It's not universally the same in each county. But one of the things we have to do is recognize we have to invest more in, we have to pay people better. We have to pay people better. We have to invest in better equipment. We have to protect qualified immunity. And we have to make sure that the standards of what we're doing in our execution of law enforcement are held to a very high standard. So we have the best in the country.
You're watching The Bill Walton Show. I'm here with Glenn Youngkin, who I hope will be our next governor of Virginia. And we're talking about bringing back, we haven't used this term yet, but law and order as an issue in the campaign, which fortunately we haven't had to deal with in years, but because of the events of the last couple of years is now front and center for everyone.
It is.
Our security, our family's security.
It is. It is.
And which department in Virginia oversees law enforcement? And do you have anybody in mind that would be a good candidate to run that?
Well, I haven't yet. Our policy teams are
Okay.
laid out. And in fact, we're working with law enforcement leaders across Virginia and community leaders across Virginia to make sure that we, in fact, have a really strong policy.
What would be the ideal person to fill that?
Someone who actually has worked in law enforcement,
Yeah.
I think, is critical. And that is critical. Not people who haven't worked in law enforcement. That, to me, is a primary characteristic. But, Bill, something you said earlier, excuse me, this is about common sense. Mm-hmm. And this is, we talk about things that have been lost in leadership and politics today, in public service today. I view common sense has been checked at the door.
Yeah.
And when you go through the big issues that Virginians are most concerned about, and we've talked about education. Well, common sense education is letting the schools actually teach our children. Let's invite our kids back into the classroom and let's teach our children. Let's teach our children the things they need to know in order to really thrive and fulfill their dreams. And let's not teach them divisive curriculum.
I'm in total agreement, but how does the governor do that? How do we make changes? Because you take something like the Loudoun County School Board.
Yes.
How do you're governor, it's 6 months from now or 7 months from now. It's time to take action. What do you do?
Well, the first thing we do is we have a whole new state superintendent, and we have a whole new...
And that state superintendent will look like, what attributes do you want to have there?
That state superintendent will believe in real curriculum, teaching our children how to think as opposed to what to think.
Okay.
That state superintendent will be an advocate for charter schools and school choice. That state superintendent will be very comfortable standing up against teachers' unions and the teachers' associations. That state superintendent will be very, very comfortable actually speaking out when he sees bad things or she sees bad things happening in schools. This is what, and then we have a school board of education, which in fact passes basic curriculum guidelines for the whole Commonwealth.
That's the key.
And the key here is
you got to take back control of the curriculum.
You bet we do. You bet we do. And right now, what's happening in Loudoun County is kind of the out of control enactment of edicts that have come from the State Board of Education. And oh, by the way, what's happening in Loudoun County, and we've seen it. It started out simply with the basic. We're going to get Dr. Seuss out of our curriculum, and it escalates to our schools aren't open, and it escalates further to critical race theory, and it escalates further when we have an elementary school teacher who stands up and says, based on my religious beliefs and based on what I know is good for elementary school children, I will not do what you've asked me to do. And that teacher is immediately put on administrative leave. And so what we're seeing is really just a runaway train based on a very bad direction that was set early. And no one is standing up for the kids and for the parents and for the teachers. And as governor, I'm going to appoint people into these jobs, but as governor, I'm going to stand up and make sure that the parents and the teachers and the students know that I have their back.
Yeah. Well, see, it sounds like you understand. So I've had 10 or 12 education businesses I've either started or bought or run or whatever. And you're talking about kind of this unholy alliance between the people who develop the curriculum, the textbook publishers, the teachers' colleges, the obviously the unions, and in some cases the Parent Teachers Association. Yes. They're all aligned in this politically correct woke direction, and you got to get at all those elements if you're going to bring about change.
You do, and on top of that, we have to recognize that teachers do want to teach.
Well, that's the thing. The teachers
want to teach. So this is not to vilify the teachers. Yeah. This is to vilify this. Unfortunately, the system is broken. Well, and we have to fix the system and put families back in control of their kids' education. And this is why school choice. This is why charter schools, education savings accounts are so important, that we then can introduce competition into what is right now an environment that has no competition and families have no choice. And I'm all about individual liberty here. And this is why I think as governor, we can make so much progress on education in Virginia.
Well, you're saying so. I had a quick personal anecdote. I had a language business where we taught kids Spanish and French K through 6th grade. And we had to find teachers for this program. It was a pull-out program where kids would go to it after school. And it was so easy to find teachers who'd been in schools that loved teaching but left the system because they couldn't stand being in the system. Yeah. So this is not about teachers. This is about the system.
It is. It is. And it's also a great example of the difference in basic philosophy between a common sense focused business person, me, and a 40-year politician, Terry McAuliffe. Now, I mean, he's been around this for 40 years. He basically says what he needs to say whenever he needs to say it. And if we go back and pick almost any issue, Terry has been on either side of it, depending on when he needs to say what he needs to say. And qualified immunity is one of these really important ones in law enforcement. I just want to highlight the fact that when Terry McAuliffe was governor of Virginia, the murder rate in Virginia went up 31%. He did not stand up for law enforcement. He was not focused on community safety. And as a result, we had terrible outcomes.
Yeah.
And so let's just be careful, because when he starts to run as governor again, like he is, he'll say whatever he needs to say, but his track record is his track record. When we look at Virginia's economy and the job creation engine that has just faltered, the reason why we're in the state we're in today is because Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam didn't know how to build an economy that was durable. They wanted one that was government controlled, centrally controlled, picking winners and picking losers. They wanted one that was driven by, in fact, having red tape that they could choose to either suspend or not. They wanted an economy that they got to control, as opposed to pulling government out of it and unleashing innovation across Virginia and allowing the business community to grow and thrive.
So what are 2 or 3 or 4 things that you do to get the economy moving in a free market direction?
Yeah, the first thing we have to do is we absolutely have to get open. And I know everybody says, well, we'll be open by January, Glenn, when you're governor. The reality is what Ralph Northam and Terry...
In every aspect of the lockdown.
In every aspect of the lockdown,
Okay.
including the regulatory burden that has been pounded on top of companies. And remember, Ralph Northam extended COVID compliance indefinitely. So we have to peel back layers.
That's a long time.
It's a long time. We got to peel back layers.
Yeah.
On top of that, small businesses have suffered mightily.
Yeah.
I mean, 25% of Virginia's businesses in the last year either went under permanently or were at least closed for an extended period of time. And so in order to revitalize our small business community, we're going to have to come up with a way to allow them to run for a while. I actually think we should have a tax holiday for a period of time for small businesses to allow them to get back on their feet. And I think small businesses are the engine of our economic revival. We got to get them moving again. And then I think finally we need to recognize that training a workforce and getting Virginians ready to go back to work has absolutely been dropped by Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam. And so over the course of the last year, we had 1.5 million Virginians that filed for first-time unemployment benefits. Yeah. So much of it unnecessary because he kept the economy closed for so long. But the reality is we still have over 200,000 people that have not returned to the workforce in Virginia. And the primary reason is they're not prepared to take the jobs that are available. There's tens of thousands of jobs that are available.
Well, and they're also getting $300 a month to stay home.
And we've just
is that a week?
We've just finally reinstated the requirement to go look for a job.
What kind of power does the governor have versus the CDC mandates? Because one of the things that's happening is that they've mandated if you're a landlord, you can't evict anybody during this period. Well, it overlooks the fact that most of the rental properties are owned by small business people that might have 1, 2, 3, or 4 units, and they're hurting, little guys, trying to protect little guys, and so the CDC is just totally clueless as to how the economy really works.
Yeah, and on top of that, and just to pick on this issue for a minute, we have CDC guidelines that are national guidelines, and we have many states run by Republican governors, by the way, that have been open and moving faster, and their economies have recovered faster. And we have Virginia that has been unnecessarily closed for an extended period of time. And think about the domino effect of that. Mm-hmm. So a few weeks ago, and I don't have the latest number, but as of 3 weeks ago, only 45% of the jobs that had been lost in Virginia had come back, versus 80% of the jobs that had been lost that had come back in Texas versus the jobs that had been lost. And so when you just take that fact And you recognize the domino effect of that. Well, people don't have the jobs yet to go take, and therefore we have landlords that are being told that people in their buildings can't pay their rent. Well, the reason why they can't is because Governor Northam kept our economy closed. And everything has been shoved out for an extended period of time, which just creates more challenges. And so I look back at the job that he has done, and we mentioned this earlier. He absolutely followed and was timid at every step of the way, as opposed to recognizing, and they always talk about following the science. Well, the science told us that the kids should have been in school. Science told us that the economy could be open and people could be safely re-engaging in economic activity. And we watched other states do it, and that's why Virginia is so far behind right now relative to other states.
And we've got our pandemic czar declaring that masks you buy in stores really don't work.
Yes.
And so what have we been doing except virtue signaling this whole time? How do you bring? We talked about McAuliffe, but Joe Biden, for a lot of people who think like you and I do, and Kamala Harris are not exactly. There seems to be target rich there. There are a lot of problems with what they're doing and what the federal government's doing now. How do you bring them into the race if you want to do that?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost for Virginians, and again, this is not Republicans and independents and Democrats. This is Virginians really standing up against the liberal left. And what Virginians have seen coming out of Richmond, and now they see coming out of Washington, is this extreme left position on every issue. We have a COVID relief bill that has very little COVID in it. I was absolutely supportive of there being incremental relief if it went to the people that needed it and could actually benefit and got our economy moving again. But when you really look at the COVID relief bill, it only had about 8% in it that was actually targeted towards COVID health. And it did have some support for people who might need it from stimulus checks. But the reality is 75, 80% of that bill didn't go to anything to do with COVID. And Virginians see that. When we start talking about infrastructure bills, and we recognize that the infrastructure bill that was originally proposed didn't have that much infrastructure in it. And it, again, reflects the fact that the left liberals believe that it's their money, not our money. And you can spend it any way you want. And Virginians don't believe that. And what I've heard over and over and over again is the big issues of how do we build a new economy and get out of this? How do we, in fact, get our schools moving? How do we ensure public safety? The Terry McAuliffe left liberals, and oh, by the way, the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and AOC, they're all on the wrong side of these issues for Virginians. And that's why we have so much momentum in this campaign.
You're watching the Bill Walton Show, and I'm here with Glenn Youngkin, and we're talking about how a Republican can win in Virginia, Northern Virginia. Now, we talk about all this and all this money. Well, a lot of it's going into Northern Virginia. I mean, you talked about job creation. That's where all the jobs have been created, and people there are pretty happy with this. How do you win in Northern Virginia, or how do you at least make enough dent in Northern Virginia to take the rest of the state? Take the state.
So the reality is that we don't have to win Northern Virginia to win Virginia. But the other reality is Northern Virginians are standing up and actually expressing strong views on all of these issues as well. And we talk about Loudoun County schools, and this is not a Republican family issue. This is a Loudoun County family issue. And we're watching families come together and stand up and express strong views about the wrong direction of schools in Loudoun County and in Fairfax County. We watched the families all around Thomas Jefferson, and the fact that the admissions policy was being forcibly changed and it was moving from a meritocracy to a managed outcome. And this is not, again, Republicans against Democrats. This is actually Virginians against the left liberal view that we're going to manage outcomes and make sure everybody is given the same outcome, no matter how hard they work. This is the challenge with the left liberal agenda today, and it's not restricted to outside Northern Virginia. So what we're seeing across the Commonwealth is all of a sudden the minority vote, which counts a lot in Northern Virginia. I mean, a ton in Northern Virginia. The non-white vote in Northern Virginia is really important. This is the Hispanic vote and the Asian vote and the Indian vote and the Muslim vote. And these folks absolutely care deeply about these topics. And yet the Republican Party in Virginia hasn't engaged to any real extent.
I think you win on the cultural issues because that cuts across the political divide. Yeah. When you're talking about kids, you're talking about what they learn, what their opportunities are. That's deep. Yeah. And I think you can. I think you can win with that.
Bill, it is deep. The other big voting group is women.
Yeah.
And we've watched women across the Commonwealth, but particularly in Northern Virginia, in Virginia Beach, and in suburban Richmond, move away from the Republican Party over the last couple of years. And we're bringing them back. My wife is leading this amazing initiative called Women for Glenn. And we have thousands and thousands and thousands of women now fully engaged over these most important issues. And guess what? The most important issues are, do we have an economy that's durable and jobs that are dependable? Do we have schools that we believe in and are our community safe? And these are issues that I am so excited to actually draw the stark comparison between where I will lead Virginia and where Terry McAuliffe wants to drag Virginia.
So safety, education, opportunity.
You got it.
Hey, I think I've got your slogan.
Yeah, yeah.
But Winsome Sears.
Yes.
Have you two connected, and are you starting to work together? I think you've got an event coming up.
We do. So we have a great ticket. So Winsome Sears is the lieutenant governor candidate.
Winsome's been here. She was on the show with Star Parker.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
She's
Winsome's great. And then Jason Miyares is our attorney general candidate. And we have a fabulous ticket. And let's be real. We've got an outside business person. We've got a minority woman who, by the way, is an immigrant. And we have, as a lieutenant governor, and we absolutely have the child of a Cuban immigrant running for attorney general. This represents America. This represents Virginia. And this is why I think why Virginians are so excited about what's happening in the Republican Party in Virginia this year.
A minority woman immigrant with an AR-15.
Yes. Yes. Well, she's a Marine.
Ex-Marine, yeah.
Yeah, she's a Marine.
Yeah.
Remember, once a Marine, always a Marine. So she's a Marine. And Winsome, I think also.
I think together that's a pretty formidable
It's a formidable
lineup.
ticket. It really is.
Now, is she going to be going into places that you won't go or can't go or less likely to be well received? I mean, I'm speaking as a fellow, white male conservative.
Well, we're really well coordinated first.
Yeah.
And we actually have a number of weekly calls to make sure we have everybody going in the right places and making sure we're comprehensively present in Virginia. But we also recognize that each of us needs to be all places at times. And so there's moments where we'll all be together and times
I
we'll
think
go
you need to
independently.
go. I mean, as I think about it, I think we need to be colorblind with this.
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the first coalition groups that we started was Black Virginians for Glenn. And we started back in March.
Yeah.
Not for the convention, but recognizing that what Republicans have done in Virginia over the last 10 years is show up and ask for minority votes in October. And we actually want to engage and understand what we need to do in order to best represent and serve minority populations starting in March. Because when I'm governor in Virginia, I'm going to be governor for everybody. And so this is one of the great things about all three of us as a ticket showing up all over Virginia. And whether we're in underserved communities, whether they're rural communities that are seeing real economic challenges in Southwest Virginia or in Southside Virginia, or whether they're urban communities that need support and help and want to know that their governor and lieutenant governor and attorney general are going to be serving them too. I mean, this is what's most important for us, is to make sure that all Virginians know we're going to go work for them.
Winston tells a powerful story about how the Democrats have not served the minority communities and in fact have hurt them.
Yeah, you bet.
And then, starting with the abortion issue, how many black babies have been aborted in America in the last 50 years? There's a line in The Godfather after the Godfather's dead and Michael Corleone's sitting there with Tom Hayden at the funeral, and they know that the bad guys are gonna come after him. And Tom turns to Michael and he says, "How are they gonna come after you? I mean, what do you think? What are your vulnerabilities? I mean, you've got the Carlyle Group, and that's I suppose we could be considered a cap. What is there anything you're worried about that we need to be talking about?"
The short answer is no. What I know they're going to try to do is suggest that being a successful business person is somehow or another bad.
That's why I wanted to start with private equity.
And I actually take a completely different view of this. And as I said, I had when I was growing up some challenges in our family, and my dad lost his job a couple times, and I was a financial aid student in high school at the private school I had a chance to go to because of basketball, and to me, I've had a chance to live an American dream, and I want all Virginia families to actually step back and say, whatever our biggest, boldest dream is, I want to feel like I can achieve it. And I think that that's something that I look forward to speaking into. Mm-hmm. Winsome looks forward to speaking into. Jason looks forward to speaking into. Because this, I think, is really the disservice that the left liberal agenda pays to so many people, which is stay where you are, we'll take care of you, and make you dependent on government, as opposed to look what you can do. And let's open up the fast lanes and run as fast as you can and dream your dreams. And we'll do this without government interference, although there will be help along the way. I mean, one of the things my wife and I learned last summer, we started an organization called Virginia Ready to help people who had lost their jobs get retrained for new jobs. And what we found is people signed up left, right, and center. They just never knew that if they went to a community college for a 6 to 12 week credentialing program, they could get a great job. And so much of this is illuminating opportunity and helping people find the path and then letting them run, because Virginians are gritty. Virginians are ambitious. Virginians like to lead, not follow. And this is why I'm so energized by the support that I'm getting as governor.
Glenn Youngkin, thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming on. This is inspiring.
Thank you.
I'm impressed, and let's go forth and win.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back and
We'll
having a
get
further
you back,
discussion.
and we'll follow it. Dig a little deeper in some of these things that I wished we'd gotten to, but we will next time.
We will next time.
You've been watching the Bill Walton Show. Been here with Glenn Youngkin, and terrific conversation, and we'll be talking with you all soon. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Want more? Click the subscribe button or head over to thebillwaltonshow.com to choose from over 100 episodes. You can also learn more about our guest on our Interesting People page. And send us your comments. We read every one, and your thoughts help us guide the show. If it's easier for you to listen, check out our podcast page and subscribe there. In return, we'll keep you informed about what's true, what's right, and what's next. Thanks for joining.